On the 5th of November, 2022, Aaron Carter was found dead in his Southern California home. The singer was just 34 years old, and the heartbreaking announcement has left both his fans and family shocked and distressed. Unfortunately, it's so much more upsetting because Aaron's life was extremely tumultuous. From battling drug addiction to dealing with numerous family issues to his rocky relationship, his last few years had many more downs than they did ups. So if you want to know everything about the singer's cautionary tale, stick around to find out more about the troubling life the pop star lived, the dark side of fame. Aaron Carter started off his career as a singer, but eventually established himself as a teen heartthrob and a star in his own right. His 2000s album, Aaron's Party, reached triple platinum status, which also included one of his most popular hits, I Want Candy. Everyone who wasn't living under a rock knew just how good that song was. Carter would even have a guest appearance on The Lizzie McGuire Show, at which point he also recorded his third album. He was only 13, and apart from having 3 very successful albums, was also supporting Britney Spears on tour, who at the time was at the peak of her own career. Sounds like he had it all going, right? But we should know better by now. Like many other young stars of his generation, this success was accompanied by a dark side. It's only very recently that the public has begun to realize just how deep these teens were stuck in the industry. Unfortunately, the stars of the 90s and 2000s have lived through severely tragic and life-changing moments that have mostly resulted because of being in the limelight. Stars like Demi Lovato, Macaulay Culkin, Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, and Amanda Bynes are a few other names who've suffered. Carter was just another victim of this fame, and from a generation that was too old to benefit from the recently increased mental health awareness. Had such help been available at an earlier age, Aaron may have lived a very different life from the disturbing one he did. The lawsuit filed against the manager. Carter's time as a pop star came to a sudden halt when his parents filed a lawsuit against his former manager, Lou Pearlman. The disgraced manager was once one of the most successful men in the industry after he had succeeded spectacularly with NSYNC and Backstreet Boys. Pearlman, though, hadn't done what had been expected of him. He had mismanaged all of his artists' careers, lost earnings, and signed dodgy contracts with them. All of his insensible actions would lead him to being sued by every artist and group that he had worked with. Aaron was just one of them. Carter's mother was furious and claimed that the fraud he had committed was the least of his crimes, but she didn't explain herself, instead choosing to stay silent for the sake of the children's careers. Pearlman was being prosecuted left and right while losing each case left and right as well. Once again, Carter's family claimed that he hadn't paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in royalties that were owed to Aaron for his debut album. This lawsuit heralded the start of what would be a distressing life. Next followed money troubles. While facing legal issues with his old label, Aaron recently revealed just how hard the past 10 years of his life had been. His career began when he was just 7 years old, and since then, he's been managed by his parents, and he would continue to work for another 10 years without a single break. Aaron was fully aware that he was doing very well financially. He wasn't yet 18, but had managed to amass a fortune that exceeded $20 million. His family had everything they could have dreamt of. But his 18th birthday came around, and he learned that he owed $4 million in taxes. Not only that, but it turned out his parents had also neglected to set aside a small percentage of his savings, which they were required to do by law. He had only $2 million in his account. The teen was forced to file for bankruptcy. The news that followed him for the next few months constantly discussed how he was broke, even though none of this was his fault. The troubling choices made by his parents would drastically alter the course of his life. Numerous family issues plagued him. If his parents' neglect of his finances wasn't enough, there were a lot of hardships to follow. In 2019, Aaron claimed that he had been sexually abused by his sister, Leslie, who had died of a drug overdose 7 years ago. He explained that the abuse would take place between the ages of 10 to 13, whenever his sister would forget to take medication for her bipolar disorder. That wasn't the only claim against a family member. He also stated that his older brother and member of the Backstreet Boys, Nick Carter, had abused him throughout his life. Aaron stood by this claim despite Nick's legal team heatedly denying these accusations. Leslie can't defend herself against these claims, but even so, we can't deny that these statements are disturbing, to say the least, and why Aaron had been plagued by problems until his final days. Carter's imperfect relationship. Carter's on-again, off-again relationship with Melanie hasn't helped him gain any kind of stability either. They first got together in 2020 when he posted a picture of the duo and later, a photo of her name tattooed on his face. Only 2 months later, Melanie would be arrested for domestic violence and Nick would announce that he was single once again. Only 3 weeks later, the duo would announce that they were having a kid and were back together, but she would go on to suffer a miscarriage and only a few days later announce their engagement. We used the word roller coaster, right? Almost a year later, Melanie was pregnant again and successfully gave birth to a son, Prince. While the two seemed happy at the time of their son's birth, it didn't last. A week later, the two would announce that they'd split up. Carter tweeted about the reason, stating that his family was in touch with Melanie so that they could work on putting him under a conservatorship. He believed that his girlfriend was secretly conversing with his family and spilling the dirt on him. The tweet blamed his brother and sister for ruining his life and destroying his family. Only a few months later, the two appeared in a picture on Instagram again, which proved that the duo was, once again, over their issues with Melanie calling Aaron her fiancé. In January 2022, the duo had broken up again. Aaron tweeted that he couldn't trust any woman and wouldn't be looking to date anytime soon. For the second time, Melanie was accused of physical abuse, and Aaron was forced to file a restraining order against her. But that wasn't all. She would file a restraining order against Aaron, too, claiming that he threw her and their son out of his house, at which point she had broken a rib. To make matters worse, it turned out that Melanie had made the whole thing up. She was suffering from postpartum depression and made the story up. You should know what happened next. A few months later, the two were on good terms again, with Melanie wearing an engagement ring once again. The model shared her thoughts about his passing hours after the announcement. She was pictured outside his house crying at the news and also posted a video on TikTok in which she can be seen sobbing behind the wheel of a car. This relationship wasn't easy for either one of the participants. Amidst all of Carter's troubles, we doubt that such a disquieting relationship could have helped him. On top of it all, health concerns. Aaron's gaunt appearance had begun to trouble the public, with people wondering what was going on. The singer appeared on the health talk show The Doctors to discuss the issues for which he'd been in the press. After a series of tests, they learned that Carter had a candida infection because of his weakened immunity. Plus, Carter was taking benzodiazepines with opiates, which is a deadly combination. Carter explained that he was taking the medication for his anxiety and sleep issues. He would later appear on the show again in 2019, where Carter would disclose that he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. Carter's health concerns were just another troubling revelation on top of everything else going on in his life. Carter's disturbing fear came true. On his first appearance on The Doctors, the singer voiced his most heartbreaking doubts. He told the host that one of his greatest fears was that he wouldn't be able to live a long life. The conversation gradually led to the death of his sister, Leslie, who had died at the young age of 25. He claimed that while dying early was the source of worry, there was also the fact that he had bid his sister goodbye. He recalled the tragic memory and recalled that he had kissed his sister's cheek as she lay in her coffin. Once he did, he couldn't stop and cried all through it. Carter would later reveal that his family was fully aware that he was also taking Xanax, and he was fully aware that there wouldn't be a happy ending if he continued to consume these drugs, which disturbingly turned out to be true. Carter's September 2022 rehab stint. Carter was working to get better so that he could regain custody of his then 9-month-old son. In a recent interview, he revealed that he was voluntarily visiting a rehab program to get back in line. Carter explained that the abstinence program allowed him to work with an individual counselor. The singer had received certification for CPR and was part of a group therapy session and parenting classes as well. What was most surprising was that Melanie and Carter were on a shopping trip together during the interview, which meant they were doing better than before. At the time, Aaron also announced that Melanie's mother had temporary custody of their son, and he was finally on this program to be able to get his son back. There's no doubt that Aaron loved his son. He could be seen regularly holding his son close to him, and from an outsider's perspective, could have grown up to be a loving father. Unfortunately, Carter's early death prevented him from reuniting with his son, who's now only 11 months old. His troubling life had finally caught up to him, just days before his death. And even more bad news, Carter didn't seem to be doing good just days before his death. Fans who joined his Instagram Live were confused by Carter's behavior and even voiced their concerns. Once his death was announced, some fans weren't surprised and knew that the singer needed help. Fans were forced to send a welfare check to his home after one live session in September. Fortunately, he was just asleep, and the cops left his home soon after. In another live session, weeks before his death, Aaron talked about how he still loved Nick and would always be there for him. This time around, fans seemed to have it right. With each disturbing Instagram Live session, the fans' worry only grew, but because of circumstances out of their control, couldn't do anything about it. And that's all for now. Do you think Aaron's disturbing past was a cause of his early death? Let us know in the comments below, and thanks for watching.